at the church. The church ministry centers are there. There's a K through 8 school over there. High school is on another building, so it's a pretty big campus. So tonight, what I want to do is something different. What I want to do is what I've been doing is having people come out and kind of give a little bit about themselves, a little bit of a testimony. What I want to do tonight is kind of do something a little bit more relative to everybody. What I want to do is try to relate the today's current events to a person at a personal level. So if we were to name out anybody, name out the top 4. Hopefully it's the same one I'm thinking of. The top 4 current events happening in the world today. What would you say it is?
Ebola virus.
Ebola virus 1.
Iraq.
Iraq war.
Israel.
Israel, Palestine. What's the 4th one? One more war. Ukraine. I think those are the 4 top headlines in the news in the last week, right? If you notice, out of the 4, 3 of them are wars, right? That means 3 of them are in conflicts. Of the 3, 2 of them are religion-based. So what I want to do is just kind of give you guys a little bit of background of why these religions are having their disputes, why the conflicts are happening. Some of it is based on my research, some of it is based on what I learned in church, and some of it is based on my own opinion of everything that's going on. So the 3 top religions basically that's happening in the world today that's having conflicts are the Muslims, the Jews, and the Christians, right? Each of them actually have their own base, I guess you would call it a historical manual that they base their religion on. The Muslims have the Quran, the Jews have the Tanakh, and the Christians have the Bible. Now, the Christian Bible and the Jewish Tanakh actually comes from the same historical origin. They come from the laws of Moses and Abraham. Now, of course, the most popular laws of Moses is the 10 Commandments, right? So, of the 10 Commandments, actually, in the Jewish law, there's actually thousands of laws. The 10 Commandments are the top 10 that God gave to Moses as his top priorities. When Jesus came down to earth, when he was born, he actually did things that were kind of out of tradition, out of cultural tradition to the Jewish people. So one example is, I'm going to read a couple of verses from Mark chapter 2, 15 to 17. One example is when Jesus was having dinner at Levi's house, many tax collectors and sinners were eating with him and his disciples, for there were many who followed him. When the teachers of the law, who were Pharisees, saw him eating with the sinners and tax collectors, they asked his disciples, "Why does he eat with tax collectors and sinners?" On hearing this, Jesus said to them, "It is not the healthy who need a doctor, but the sick. I have come not to call the righteous, but sinners." So, and then another example is in John 4:9, and some of you might have already heard the story about the lady at the well. She's a Samaritan woman who Jesus started talking to as a Jew. And in those days, that was against Jewish culture. You cannot talk to a Samaritan because they're peon, they're no good. And you can't talk to a woman because men are dominant. So when you talk to a Samaritan woman, it's totally against Jewish culture. So think of it this way. Most of us are Chinese or Asian. So think of what Jesus did as same as going into your girlfriend's house and calling your girlfriend's parents by their first name. Right? It's a completely diss of their culture. Also, think of even the second example. If you go into your house and you walk over to their house with your shoes on, that's also something that's against Chinese culture, right? So think of Jesus when he did all these things against the Pharisees. That's kind of in the same context of what he was doing to the Jewish people. So as far as they were concerned, he was wrong. But what it did is it caused a divide among the Jewish people. So there are Jews. Jesus was a Jew. And there are Jews that believe what Jesus taught, and there are Jews that don't believe what he taught. And the main thing, that the difference of what they taught and what was believed and not believed, is that the Christians believed that Jesus was the Messiah, and the Pharisees and some of the Jewish people that are still today did not believe that Jesus was the Messiah. So who's the Messiah? And I'm reading from a definition. The Messiah is the promised deliverer of the Jewish nation prophesied in the Hebrew Bible. And number 2 definition, a leader or savior of a particular group or cause. So, in short, again, Jews believed that did not believe that Jesus was the Messiah, but the Christians did believe it. So keep that phrase in mind. Now let's go to Iraq. Iraq, the war is between what they call Sunnis and Shiites. How many people know difference between the two. Right? We hear this news every day on the news. Nobody knows the difference between the two. That's why I think it's kind of interesting. Do a little research so I can educate you guys. So here's another definition. And keep in mind what I just said. Another difference between Sunnis and Shiites has to do with the Mahdi, the rightly guided one, whose role is to bring a just global caliphate into being. As historian Timothy Furnish has written, the major difference is that the Shiite believes he has already been here and will return from hiding. For Sunnis, he has yet to emerge into history, a comeback versus a coming out, if you will. Isn't that very similar? It's so similar. When I read that, I couldn't believe it. It was really surprising how similar the disputes between internal Muslims and the Jews and the Christians are. So that's a very close definition. Now, even within the Muslims, within the Muslim community, there were disputes or conflict, right? So with Shiites and Sunnis are all Muslims, and they're fighting within each other. Well, Christians actually have two separate groups too. And one group is what we call the Protestants, which is basically the evangelical Christians, which is what our church believes. The other group is what we call Catholics and Orthodox. Difference between the two, there's two main differences. The Catholic Orthodox believe that Mary was sinless. So when she bore as a virgin, when she gave birth to Jesus, she did not sin. That's their version of what they interpret. They call it immaculate conception. We as evangelicals don't believe that. There's a verse in the Bible that says, "For all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God." All means all. That means when Adam sinned when Adam sinned on the earth, anybody who was born on this earth, with the exception of Jesus, because he wasn't conceived by a man, he was conceived by God. Everybody else is a sinner. That in our book includes Mary. Mary is a sinner just like everybody else. So that's just our belief. The other difference is the Protestants we don't believe in what they call the Apocrypha books. Basically, it's an extension of the 66 books that we call the Bible. The Catholics have other books that they actually go to too. So there's a couple differences within the Christian community. So based on this, it kind of tells you some of the causes of conflicts, right? So one cause could be that people are too black and white, right? They want to believe one thing, they don't want to respect other people's belief. What they say is it. They're black and white, and they don't want to believe anybody else or allow anybody to believe anything. So right now in Iraq, there are 300,000 Christians that are running from persecution. Their choice is convert or die. So from what I hear, I think they're going all over the country, all over the world to try to flee Iraq, the Christians there. Another reason is because of anger or revenge. Right? The best example is the Israelis versus Palestinians. Right? You got three Israeli teenagers that got killed, and then they retaliate when a Palestinian teenager gets killed, and the war starts. Everybody wants revenge. Everybody wants the last hit. They want, even with the mediation going, they still want the last say. The other reason is for disagreements. When you get conflicts because you just don't agree, you simply cannot agree to go on, and the disagreements stay. The conflict never ends. So. And then the fourth reason, based on everything we just saw, is when our leaders disagree. So even within the Muslim community, they have leaders, but there are Shiite leaders and there are Sunni leaders. So it depends who you want to follow. Even though you're Muslim, you have to choose between who you're going to follow. Same thing with the Jews and the Christians, right? You have to either believe the Jews that Jesus is not the Messiah, or you believe the Christians that Jesus is the Messiah. One or the other. Okay? But I think in my personal experience, I think out of all the conflicts that happen, whether it's in the world, whether it's personal, now there are all kinds of personal conflicts that you can have on a day-to-day basis. You can have them with your friends, you can have them in court, you can have with coworkers, and bosses, the family members. In my opinion, the toughest relationship that you can have is being married, the husband and the wife. And I'll explain a little bit more about why that is, but first I want to read some really interesting statistics to you guys. Right now, the divorce rate in America is 50% on the first marriage. That means out of 27 of us here, 12 of us are going to end up in divorce. I'm already one of them. so I'll figure it out. 67%, so let's make it even. Let's say there's 30 of us. So that's 50%, that's 15 of us that got divorced, 15 of us that are still married, right? Of the 15, let's say the 15 that got divorced got remarried, second marriage. 67% of you are going to get a divorce. That means that out of the 10, what is that? Seven of you are going to get divorced again. Right? Third marriage, 75% of you are going to get divorced. So 67% of second marriages end up in divorce. 74% of third marriages end up in divorce. Okay? Another statistic I want to give to you guys is the reasons for divorce. I Googled the top 10, and here are the top 10. Okay? Number 10, sexual incompatibility. Number 9, lack of emotional needs being met. Number 8, change in priorities. Number 7, lack of commitment to the marriage. Number 6, physical abuse. Number 5, intellectual incompatibility. Too dumb. Number 4, drug addiction. Alcohol probably throws in there something. Number 3, poor communication. Number 2 is money. Guess what number 1 is? Oh. Come on, you guys know what number 1 is. Huh? Infidelity. Infidelity, adultery. Number 1 reason for divorce. Okay? I can tell you from my own experience, I made that mistake. And the reason I can tell you my reason, and now in hindsight, I know I was wrong, is because, and I think most of the time, people think the same thing, because they think the grass is greener on the other side of the fence. They think that if I end this marriage now, then now I'm finding somebody else, I'm going to be happier with her, so I'm going to leave this person. But what happens is, the issues that you've been having with your first wife, you're going to have different issues with your second wife. That's usually what happens. I'm an example of that too. So just remember, the grass is not greener on the other side. There will always be issues with women, and I'm gonna come back to that. I mean, the other both ways, men and women. I think that
It's being recorded.
Can't rewind it.
Judges all right. Good one.
I caught myself.
You're going to post this up, man? You're going to get some
No,
negative
I'm
comments?
All right, solution. How do you avoid conflict? Okay. So one way, to me, I have four ways to avoid conflict. There are probably other ways, but these are based on my personal experience and based on all the research and based on everything I just told you. One way is, I'll give you an example, is I used to have a coworker, really smart girl, you know, but she always wanted to do things her way, I wanted to do things my way, but we always end up with the same result. Both of us wanted to get to the same end result, but we wanted to do it 2 different ways. It wasn't worth it for us to keep on arguing because it didn't matter. So we just agreed to disagree. That's one way you can avoid conflict. If it's not worth it, don't even do it. Don't even bother with it. If it's not, you know, prioritize what you're gonna pick and choose your battles for. Right? That's one way you can avoid conflict. The other way is empathy. If you understand what the other person feels, you have a better chance of avoiding conflict. One example I can give you is my second divorce. My ex-wife actually moved out here to the Bay Area from New York, and you know, after a while, in New York is a very fast-paced state, right? The city, everything's fast-paced. When she moved over here, I told her that she did not have to work. I had a house with the mortgage paid off. She was going to live with my mom, which she got along with very well. And all she had to do was take care of me, take care of the house. She can do whatever she wanted. I take care of her. It went away okay for a while, but after a year, she got kicked out, basically ran out of things to do and got bored. So she actually came up to me and basically she said, you know, I want to go back to New York. And I said, fine, you know, I understand how you feel. I'm not going to force you to stay here. If you're not happy, there's nothing I can really do. So I let her go. That was 14 years ago. I never heard from her since. But because I understood, I tried to put myself in her shoes. I was able to let go. It wasn't easy. I was still having dreams for 5 years, off and on. But you know, it's going to eventually end. And, you know, if you try to understand the way other people feel, and not just in marriage or girlfriends or in anything you do, if you understand how they feel, you have a better chance of avoiding conflict. A third one is to have options. So sometimes you watch some television shows where there's this big disaster, and you have a bunch of people that they want to try to figure out what to do next. There could be a tornado, a hurricane, a flood, and people are stuck in different places. Usually this is a movie. And one guy tries to take control. And then you have one person that basically comes up and says, well, who put you in charge? And his answer is usually, well, you have a better idea? So, if you're going to complain about something, if you're going to debate about something, have options. Have a better idea. If you don't have options, sometimes it's better just not to say anything. That's one way to avoid conflict. So if all these things doesn't work, you have options, you have empathy, you have options, and all these things don't work. Like a good example is in the Middle East conflict. Basically what you have to do is call a mediator. Okay? So what does the Bible say? The Bible says in Matthew 18, if your brother or sister sins, go and point out their fault. Just between the two of you. If they listen to you, you have won them over. So this is a dispute between Christians. But if they will not listen, take one or two others along, so that every matter may be established by the testimony of two or three witnesses. So either you're going to have a witness or you have a mediator, so that you can have some kind of common ground. So that brings me to my next point. Even though Christians have disagreements among themselves, the basic foundation of all Christians and what they believe is they believe that who Jesus is. They believe he died on the cross for the sins of the world, that he rose from the dead on the third day, he ascended into heaven, and he's yet to come. We call it the second coming. There are 2 billion people that believe that. Now, regardless of who they believe Mary is, regardless of which Bible they read, basics, they believe the same thing. They believe that. Okay? So, if you have a common ground, you have a much better chance of making things work. So going back to the husband and wife, why are we? Well, be real careful when I say this. Why is having a husband and wife being a marriage so difficult? Number one, this again my opinion, okay, based on experience. When you're with your wife or spouse, you're with them almost 24/7, 365. Even after your kids are gone, you're still going to be with them. It don't matter. At least you're supposed to be, right? Except for the 50%. The 50% that actually toughen out and make it, they're going to be with their spouse for a very long time, for the rest of their life. That's one reason why it's very hard to stick with that person. And sometimes you live with a person, it's different than dating them. When you date someone, there's a lot of things you don't see, right? I've heard marriages that go bad because they didn't put the toothpaste on right, or the toilet paper slipped out the wrong way. It's true. I don't know. I mean, that's what I hear. I mean, I haven't actually experienced it, but there are little things that you're not going to experience until you're under the same roof, right? So that's what makes it hard. The other reason is the differences between females and males, right? Because God made us different for a reason. He made us to be compatible with each other. He made us different on purpose, biologically, mentally, whatever it is. They're very different than us. And that's why it's so hard to work with them. The best way to make a marriage work is with a mediator. And the best mediator is God. I have some handouts that I want to give you guys. And I'm going to close with this. This is what we call a marriage triangle. And basically what it shows is basically what it shows is the husband and wife starting off separately. And as the husband and wife grow closer to God, at the same time, they're going to grow closer to each other. And this marriage triangle is a really, really, really good illustration of a better chance of a marriage working. That's the way I can say it. Is it guaranteed? No. Is it always going to work? 100%? No. But does it increase the chances? Probably. The first thing you have to do is basically believe who Jesus is. And if you haven't believed in him or you're ready to make that decision, feel free to talk to me and I'll point you in the right direction. Okay, let's pray. Lord, we just thank you again for this time we can come here and learn from you. We just pray that you would bless every one of these young men tonight and you would help them to learn the lesson of how to look to you to try to avoid conflict. Pray that you would bless the rest of this night, that you would help us to keep from injury. Let's pray all this in Jesus' name. Amen.